Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first installment of the Laughing Place Book Club. We are joined today with Disney author David Bossert. And when it became time to pick how do we kick off the book club, the first book that came to mind is this beautifully done, and it's a work of art, but it's also incredibly fascinating. Very long title, though. Claude Coates, Walt Disney's Imagineer, The Making of Disneyland, from Toad Hall to the Haunted Mansion and beyond. So, thanks so much for joining us today, Dave.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I really like that countdown intro. It was really happy and upbeat, you know.
Well, I think we could all use a little bit of happy and upbeat in these pandemic times. But
Absolutely.
so, you know, I guess my first question is: Claude Coates is a name we hear a lot, particularly because
Uh-oh, you froze.
we wanted to. Oh, hey, sorry, we had a little internet issue. But how did you decide that you wanted to write a book about Claude Coates?
Well, first and foremost, I had the pleasure of meeting Claude Coates and talking with him on a regular basis for about the last 18 months of his career at Disney. And it was sort of like the beginning of my career at Disney. And I met him and introduced myself to him in the commissary at Walt Disney Imagineering. And this is, we're talking back in 1985, 86. And so I met him. And then he retired. And about a year after he retired, he passed away. And you fast forward 30 something years, and I was at a conference. And I was going into the conference. I had a name badge on, a lanyard around my neck. I was going into the conference, and there was this tall guy in a baseball cap coming towards me. And he looked at my name badge, and he said, "Dave Bossert, I just got your Dolly and Disney book at Barnes & Noble." And I was like, wow, my book is at Barnes & Noble? So I happened to catch his. I said thank you, and I happened to catch his name, and it said Alan Coates, and I thought, oh, that's got to be Claude Coates' his son, and. Anyway, I went into the conference, and mid-morning there was a break, and I went looking for Alan, and it turned out he had gone home not feeling well. And so a mutual friend of ours put us together via email, and the next thing we know, we're having lunch together. And I really wanted to just chat with him and say, I had the pleasure of meeting your father and having all these conversations and pick his brains and I peppered him with questions about Walt Disney and the early years and the early films and his work on Pinocchio and all of this stuff. And I just wanted to convey that to Alan and just let Alan know some of those stories, and the fact that I thought his father was incredibly gracious and a nice, soft-spoken guy who took his time to chat with me. And that was, really all I wanted to do. But by the end of the lunch we were having, Alan asked me if I'd be interested in writing a book on his father. And of course I said yes. And I have to say that a lot of my books have been serendipitous, sort of drop in your lap kind of situations.
Well, that's great. We got a few comments I'm going to get. First of all, Nikki says this book is on her wish list.
Excellent.
And then,
and by the way, I do want to mention to Nikki, I'm glad it's on your wish list. Be patient. The book sold out of its first printing fairly quickly. And so the second printing is being done, and, it's supposed to be in by late April, mid-May or something like that. And again, all I can say is it's up to the supply chain. I think we've all become experts on supply chain during the pandemic.
And then Heidi's having a lot of you today because our notification that we were going live actually interrupted her listening to your Skull Rock podcast.
That's fantastic. Well, Heidi, I appreciate you listening to the Skull Rock podcast, and I'm glad that you're listening to the Laughing Place show here with my friend Benji.
And then Justin is coincidentally watching you from Disneyland, probably one of the best.
Hi, Justin, down in Disneyland.
And Becky.
Oh, I love Becky. Becky and I are supposed to try and get together at some point because Becky's on the dedication page. That's right next to you. Hi, Becky.
But and then and Nikki says thank you. She'll be looking. Justin is asking about a book signing. Do you guys are you? I mean, I know we're in the pandemic time, but is there opportunity to have their book signed?
So there's a couple ways to do that. One of the easiest ways to do to get your book signed is you can go to my website, davidbossert.com, and under the tab called Free Stuff, there's a little pull down menu. Just click on book plates and you'll be able to follow the instructions. It's really just sending me a stamped self-addressed envelope, mail it to the address that's listed on that page, and I'll sign a book plate and send it back to you. Now, if you'd rather have me sign the physical book, that's going to be a little tougher, but I can tell you that I've accepted a gracious invitation from the Disney fan club that's going to have a show down in Anaheim at the Doubletree, I think it is. And I'm actually pulling up my calendar right now, Benji, because I'm going to try and tell you.
Is this the Doubletree on May 15th, 2022?
Yes, it's the Disneyana show and sale May 15th, Doubletree Suites in Orange.
And then, so great.
So I'm going to be there, and we're going to have some books, hopefully, depending on the supply chain. But I will have other books like my 3D Disneyland book and some of the other books I've done, the Ken Weber book, and I may even have some Oswald books with me.
That Ken Weber book is, if you haven't had a chance, and that Ken Weber book is amazing.
And by the way, we have a paperback version of the Ken Weber book as well, which is a little less inexpensive. It's a little less expensive, and it is very accessible to people, so they can also get that.
So turning back to Claude.
Yes. So
how would you describe the sort of scope of the book? It's not quite like it's not a hard read, I guess, but it's got beautiful pictures, sort of like a coffee table, but also historical.
Yeah, I viewed it as a coffee table book that has a lot of images in it. And again, when Alan asked me if I'd be interested in doing this book, I thought it was I thought it would be a slam dunk with a publisher, because it's like Claude Coates. I mean, the guy's a legend, and if you talk to any Disney fan out there, they know who Claude Coates is, and there was no book on him. Mark Davis has 3 books, but there was no book on Claude Coates, and so when we went to pitch it, we got met with a, hey, nobody knows who Claude Coates is. And you're sort of like, what? No, plenty of people know who Claude Coates is. And by doing the book, even more people will know who Claude Coates is. So we got turned down from a number of times that we pitched it. Anyway, I would say that Alan and I sat and really put a lot of thought and had a lot of conversations about, how do we, tackle a guy who worked for the Walt Disney Company for 54 and a half years, and he had really 3 distinct careers, or I should say there's really 3 distinct stories that we could tell about his career at the studio. One is the first 20 years, 1935 to 1955. He was in the animation department as, a lead background painter, a color stylist, designer. He worked on some of the seminal animated feature films. One of my favorites, Pinocchio. You can see Claude's work in Geppetto's workshop and other parts of the film. He did the wishing well sequence in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. And so, you know, he was an incredibly accomplished artist. And then by the time he was finishing Lady and the Tramp, he was kind of done with animation. He had been doing it for 20 years. He wanted to grow artistically. And this is, by the way, not unusual with artists. You know, you want to continue to grow and learn new things and try new things and, you know, just expand artistically. And so it was sort of perfect timing because Walt, who was a master at casting people, you know, he could see things in people that they couldn't see in themselves. And so, you know, he asked Claude to build a model of the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and then asked them to paint some of the backdrops that were, you know, for the model to use as a guide for the art director that was going to be working on the actual attraction at Disneyland. And the next thing you know, Walt comes into his office and tells him and Ken Anderson, hey, you know, our vendor isn't going to be able to get Toad done in time. They don't have the manpower. I need you guys to do it. And boom, you know, that's really when he becomes an Imagineer. And so, you know, we chose that period to cover in the book because it's sort of the first 15 years of Disneyland, which goes through some amazing changes, and some of the most iconic attractions get installed in the park during that period. And you know, we kind of ended with the Haunted Mansion, with a bit of an epilogue about the fact that, you know, Claude went on to do a lot of stuff down at Walt Disney World in Paris and Tokyo. But again, that third chapter is really Walt Disney World, Paris, and Tokyo, and him mentoring this next generation of Imagineers like Tony Baxter, you know, who, by the way, wrote the foreword to the book.
Justin mentioned he always remembered Claude Coates getting credited in color and styling along John Hench, Mary Blair, and Don DeGrady in you know, those early animated features. And I think it goes to your point of Walt being an excellent casting of talent.
Yeah,
because those folks, you know, obviously went on to a very varied career, you know, in sort of specialization. Obviously, we all know Mary Blair's work,
sure,
and you know, Claude on things like the Haunted Mansion, and Don DeGrady, you know, going in a sort of a completely different direction.
Yeah,
but
and I think, you know, Justin points out, yeah, you know, Claude was right in there, and there's a great picture in the book of Claude at his desk with Mary Blair, Walt Disney, and John Hench, you know, standing behind him, and that just kind of says it all, doesn't it?
And you know, it's interesting. What I thought was sort of not to reveal the ending, but that last part, you know, you get to Haunted Mansion, which is obviously, you know, I was not by no means I was, you know, it's his legacy in many ways. It's his Mary Poppins. It's his, you know, Michelangelo's David, right? But you really show in that last section about how much of a mentor he was, and
Yes.
how his legacy really continues through everyone, you know, not only just the people who he mentored, but then the people who he trained to be mentors. And, you know, folks like, you know, Marty Sklar and, you know, stuff that kind of kept rolling down and ensured that his legacy will live, while many of his attractions will live on forever. His impact to Imagineering continues today.
Oh no, without question. And I, you know, again, he was such a soft-spoken guy, and I was hoping to get across, and I think I got across in the text, that for Claude, it was all about being part of the team. He never was the guy that wanted to step into the spotlight and say, me, me, me. It was all me. I did it all. You know what I mean? And there are other people that, you know, did some of that.
What?
I know, shocking.
Artist wanting credit? What?
but Claude almost, to me, was a bit of an introvert. and was more interested in being part of a team of people doing something really great, and always wanted to give credit to the team. And so I think that's something that is important to highlight, because it was a long time coming to do a book like this about that guy, about Coates.
Well, and I think it definitely comes across because being removed from that generation, we know so many names that come out, and sometimes the more extroverted folks, just because they're they might be more willing to do an interview or do something, make their own book or whatever. We know those names. It doesn't necessarily their resonance within the fan community doesn't necessarily correlate to their proportional impact.
Yes.
Because some people are willing to be out there more, and familiarity builds, under sort of this internal bias. And I feel like Claude Coates, because of his sort of, wanting to be a part of it as opposed to wanting to be the thing, I think, might not have gotten his due. While we know his name, I think it was beyond time that just, we sort of gave him the spotlight because he wasn't going to take it for himself.
Right.
The way it comes across in this.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely wanted to put a spotlight on him because he's been gone for many years, and well, look, me, I like to take on subject matter that hasn't been touched before. The Kem Weber book, Dolly and Disney, Destino and Oswald. I want to do things that really bring some insights to the fan community. And so, some of these books, I had somebody tell me on the Kem Weber book, it's too niche of a subject. No, we're not going to sell enough books. Well, I'm not doing the book or any of my books to sell 1 million copies. But I'm doing the books because they're subjects that deserve to be documented. And I think that's an important thing for people to keep in mind. And when a book like Kem Weber goes out and does sell, or the Claude Coates, we sold out of the first printing of the Claude Coates book. That's, to me, says there's a hunger out there with the fan community to know more about these people and these topics.
Is there something that you hope fans will learn about Claude Coates?
Yes, everything. Everything in the book. Everything in the book. No, but in all seriousness, there was nothing substantial written about Claude Coates up until this point. So, and by the way, I do want your listeners to know that we did what we believe was the very last in-depth interview with Marty Sklar, specifically about Claude Coates, because Marty worked with and knew Claude for his entire career at Imagineering.
Well, it's glad you did the book when you did. There's so many great stories in here that it's not, by no means is this a dry book, right? You really get to know him as a person. I feel like for those that watched maybe the Behind the Attraction on Haunted Mansion, they meant you kind of get an insight onto a little bit of insight. I'd be very superficial insight into Claude, but at least it gets his name out there as someone, gives him the credit to do. But in this, you really kind of get to, there's a couple things. You get to know a man who just, you wish had a chance to be around late, in the time of fan conventions and in the internet, because he would have become one of those celebrities,
Sure.
And as well as, you have this section at the back of the book, which is basically a gallery of his work.
Yes.
And that's worth the price of admission. It's things from, Portofino in Italy, Machu Picchu in Peru, France, Russia, paintings of around the world, and just appreciating his ability to have the style as well as have the storytelling, as well as having the sort of, you know, problem solving skills he needed to do every part of his career. It really comes across in these books. But I mean, just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous art in here.
Yeah, and you know, to that point, Benji, the gallery at the back of the book was something that both Alan and I had discussed very early on, and said we have to put a gallery of his artwork in, and you know, we'll just determine how many paintings we could put in. Let me put it to you this way: this book was originally spec'd out to be about 200 pages. And again, I don't want to shoehorn a story into some predetermined amount of pages, but you know, you have to kind of have a sense of, well, we're going to do a 200-page book, you know, and that'll cost X. And if we have people pre-order the book at this price, they're going to get a deal. Well, let me just tell you, the people that pre-ordered the book at $40 got a really good deal, because this priced out as a $65 book, and it came in at 264 pages.
Yeah,
you know, and again, it's about bringing a lot of value to the people that are saying, hey, you know what, I want to pre-order that book, and I know it's going to be 2 years before I get it, but I'm going to do it because I believe in this project.
There's a picture of Claude in here, and from 1971, with Baloo in Adventureland at the Magic Kingdom in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that picture, because you're talking about, you know, the Haunted Mansion's open in both coasts at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Still has a long way to go, you know, probably another 18 years at this point. And the glimmer in his eye of just happiness. You know, this guy comes across as a man who loved what he did, not a tortured artist. You know, sometimes you talk to a former Imagineer or a former artist, you know, Disney artist or whatever, and they spend 90% of their life talking about the things they didn't get to do, right? Despite the fact they've accomplished many great things.
Right.
The smile and glimmer. This is a man who was happy that he was getting to do what he got to do.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I think that, you know, when you know, Walt first asked him to start helping on Disneyland, I think that was sort of this breath of fresh air for him artistically. This was an opportunity for him to spread his wings and to do some things that he hadn't done before, including right out of the gate when he had to paint the flats for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You know, he was used to painting, you know, these 12 by 16 paintings on his desk, and now he's on scaffolding painting these massive flats. So again, it's presenting the artist with new challenges, and it makes them alive again. I mean, I feel that way, and I know plenty of other artists who get excited when they're going to dive into something new.
Well, Mrs. Dong Lover has pre-ordered the book and said it was definitely worth the wait.
Thank you.
It is a treasure for Disney fans. But I moving on from the book, I just have to ask you, because every book that I have for me, whether it's your 3D Disneyland book, your Oswald book, your Kem Weber book, your Dali and Destino book, is a highlight of our library. So, do you have anything you can share about what else we might be looking for in the future?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not quite ready to launch this, but I'm going to do another pre-order campaign for a new book. And Benji, I want you to know, this is a scoop for you, because I haven't even mentioned this on my podcast.
Wow.
I was saving it because I did want it. I wanted you to hear it first. I wanted your listeners to hear it. But the next book I'm going to work on is called, here's the title, the title I have right now. And the thing I'll say is that the titles sometimes will change, but this is the title I'm playing with, and that is The House of the Future, Walt Disney, MIT, and Monsanto's Vision for Tomorrow.
Wow.
So I'd be curious to know from some of the people listening if that's something of interest to them. I have spent the last year or so of this pandemic culling together material from a lot of different archives, and I have just an enormous amount of material and pictures people have never seen before of this. And again, it's something that's of interest to me because I never got to see the House of the Future at Disneyland. It was gone by the time I visited Disneyland for the first time. And so it's something that I want to do, and I have some, I think, cool ideas on how to present it in book form that will really allow people to immerse themselves into a bygone attraction.
Well, I'm seeing some comments that are very very excited and they can't wait for more details about when they can pre-order.
So. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm getting ready to launch the Indiegogo campaign for the pre-orders, like we did with the Claude Coates book. And as soon as I have that live link, I'm going to blast it out to everybody who pre-ordered the Claude Coates book. I'm going to send you a special email. And Benji, I'll send you a note with a link to the Indiegogo page so you can let your listeners know about it as well.
Well, that's great.
I'm curious, with people listening, does anybody any comments coming in that you can share?
Sure. Charlotte just says, "I'll be pre-ordering."
Excellent.
I like the idea. I will pre-order. People are just excited. I think you're blowing people's minds.
Fantastic. Well, I'm just super excited about it. And I have so many projects stacked out into the coming years that I'm so excited about all of these different things. And each one is a project like the Claude Coates book that hasn't been delved into. The story hasn't been told. And I'm looking forward to telling some of those stories because there are so many different facets of the Disney universe that are exciting, and I think people want to know more about.
And it's interesting in that, I don't know if you know this or not, that there's a Hojo across the street from Disneyland.
Yes, I've been to it.
Yeah, and they are debuting. They don't quite have the the House of the Retro Future suite inspired by Monsanto's House of the Future.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that hotel because they have really renovated it and done it up. So like you're walking into mid-century.
Yeah, so it's let me share some pictures of the suite. Since we're talking about the House of the Future, obviously we look forward to the Indiegogo. But while we wait, Justin wants to know, he's at Disneyland right now. Is there anything he should do to kind of that you would say he should check out as Claude Coates related at the park?
Well, Claude has, I believe, 2 windows on Main Street. So absolutely, you can find his name on some of the windows along Main Street, and he also has a window down in the Magic Kingdom Main Street in Florida as well. But to me, his greatest, and again, this is going to be debatable, but it's to me because I love the attraction so much. Pirates of the Caribbean. To me is one of the crown jewels down at Disneyland. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree. I always, I always have this debate because there's people going, no, 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 it's the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion's, but I think in the book, I sort of let people know that Claude's personal favorite attraction that he worked on was Pirates of the Caribbean. And it may have been because of his close working relationship with Walt and the fact that Walt passed away, 3 or 4 months before the attraction opened to the public. And there's some poignant stories in the Pirates chapter about that.
Absolutely. So,
Oh.
So here's a look at the suite over at Hojo Anaheim.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you know what would look really good on this table right here?
It is one of my books.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to connect you guys. See if there's any.
I wonder if Becky is booking guests for that hotel room.
But in any case, thank you so much. It's such a treat to have you. As I said, every one of your books is a treasure. And honestly, some of your the Old Mill Press, your book comes from, has some great non-Disney books too, and including has a treasury of Christmas poems, and the sort of what would you call it? Your Frederick Douglass book.
Oh yeah, the Frederick Douglass book, yeah. So look, I'm just having a ball doing some of these books, and I love to hear from people out there that enjoy this type of stuff as well, and it's always great to get feedback and to get comments from people when we do release a book. Again, I can't stress enough that the books that I'm doing are books that might not ever be done by a big time publisher because they look down their nose at it being too small or too niche of an audience, or they're not going to sell too many copies or whatever. I'm more interested in doing beautiful books that people are going to enjoy, and every one of them out of the gate has surprised with how well they've sold.
Well, great. So thanks so much, Dave. I want to let everyone know our next book club is actually going to be next Friday, something completely different. We're going to be talking about Star Wars: The Fallen Star with Mike from our Star Wars team. So thanks so much for joining us, Dave, and we look forward to having you back in the future to discuss the House of the Future.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Benji, thanks again for having me on. And thanks to everybody out there for tuning in and listening. Benji, you guys do a great job at Laughing Place, and I really appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thanks, you guys. And thanks to everyone watching, and we'll see you next time.